Hi everyone, thanks for coming today. My name is Julia Pavone and I am with BrandVerity. I've been there for about 3 years and we are a company that specializes in brand protection and compliance. So today I'm going to be talking about how big brands are handling FTC demands. For a little bit of an overview, to start we need to think about how the FTC thinks, what are their guidelines. So I'm going to go through some of those definitions, their guidelines, some examples of what have happened previously, so what the FTC has been doing, what some brands have been struggling with. I'm going to go through a study that BrandVerity actually just released today, looking at some of the FTC guidelines and what some blog posts are looking like. And then what are the costs of non-compliance, and what are the risks that we're facing. From there, I'll go through a few examples of what some brands are doing to be proactive and have a compliant program and the actions they're taking. And then what you can do and what you can take home to your team to figure out how you can maintain a compliant affiliate program. So to start, we need to learn to think like the FTC. Affiliates and partners, per the FTC, are seen as part of a brand's marketing channel. So a lot of times people think that affiliates are going to be this external resource and they're not attached to you and they can do something, but it's not going to reflect on the brand, and that's not true. They are part of your marketing channel. They're an extension of your marketing program. And such as that, if an affiliate or partner makes a claim or discusses an attribute and receives compensation, they need to follow the guidelines. So one thing I want to highlight is compensation. Oftentimes people are going to think, okay, if I pay somebody for something, then that's compensation. But how the FTC looks at it, it can be payment, it can be freebies, it can be discounts, exclusive offers, any way that they're receiving some incentive to publish something, that's where the FTC deems them being compensated. And this can be a situation where you've got sub-affiliate networks and the relationship can be explicit or implicit. So anytime someone is going to receive some benefit from you as of the brand for making a statement, they need to disclose that information. And so for their guidelines, they're going to say that an advertisement or promotional message shouldn't suggest or imply to consumers that it is anything other than an ad. Up here I have a couple of examples. We've got a billboard for McDonald's. Pretty clear it's an advertisement. Their logo's right there in the front. Everybody sees this, knows what it is. On the right, however, is a blog post where a woman reviewed a bunch of different items that she had received or purchased and has links talking about the different items. And one thing that we don't see here is a disclosure. And the reason she needs one is because all of the links where you can go through and purchase the items from her or purchase the items that she's discussing are monetized. So she is receiving some form of compensation and some form of incentive to write about what's here. And so when we talk about a disclosure, people don't always know what that is. And so a disclosure needs to be clearly and conspicuously stated for any sponsored content. Now, clearly and conspicuously, it's a little vague. And so what we did is we sat down and we looked at a few different items from the FTC, some papers, some posts that discussed what they're looking for in a disclosure, and we came up with this framework. So looking at this framework, the first question is, does it have a disclosure? Pretty cut and dry, pretty simple. It's either there or it's not there. And then it goes into asking, does it use clear and unmistakable language? And so this is going to be for the reasonable consumer. A lot of times we're seeing now hashtag spawn on Instagram posts. Do you think everybody's going to know what that is? Probably not. Not very clear. It's also going to ask that the disclosure appears before any scrolling being required. So a funny instance where Warner Brothers had a bunch of publishers out creating YouTube videos, and for one of those YouTube videos, the publisher put a disclosure in the description of the YouTube video at the very, very bottom next to some text that said, "Bet you didn't read this far." So you need to be clear here that this has to all appear in a situation so that anyone logs onto a site, sees it, they're going to know that this is a paid marketing material and there's an incentive for the person publishing this information. So one of these examples of somebody got in trouble was Lord & Taylor. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this. It's a case where Lord & Taylor gave out this dress and also gave a monetary incentive to about 50 different publishers. and asked them to post on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter about how much they loved this dress. So anyone that follows these people is going to see, oh man, these people really like the dress. This is great. I want to follow, the style that this person has. And they never disclosed that they were paid or received the dress for free. So the FTC looked at this and said, okay, this is a problem. They're not disclosing that this is an advertisement, and went back to Lord & Taylor and requested that they have these updated, and it went through a situation where Lord & Taylor ended up settling with the FTC out of court, and in the future they would need to disclose this. This is a pretty clear example. Somebody received something, they placed an ad, they need to have a disclosure. This next example is not as clear, and so it's a situation where Cole Haan asked that everyday consumers that either had Cole Haan shoes or bags take pictures of themselves out in the world using their products. And when they would do so, post them on Instagram or their blog or something, and put in the hashtag Wandering Soul. And in doing so, you're going to enter a contest. So Cole Haan's thinking, this is great, we're going to get free publicity from everyday people that bought our products, and they're going to post them, and then their friends are going to want to buy these things. The FTC saw this as a problem because even though these people were not getting paid, they had the opportunity to receive some kind of compensation because they're entering a contest. So the FTC went back to Cole Haan and required them to turn around and update every single one of these posts and make sure that there was a disclosure that these people could be receiving some incentive because of this contest. So huge headache for Cole Haan, and it's something to think about where it's not always just a simple, we gave somebody a product, they need to have a disclosure. It can be as simple as everyday people needing to disclose that they are entering something to be paid. So now you're probably thinking, okay, I probably don't do any big things like this. I don't have any contests out there. I just work with average bloggers or something along those lines. So what BrandVerity did, we looked at 100 different bloggers that had a commercial relationship. So that means there were monetized links on the pages, and they talked about different products. So we did this study. It was actually released today, and there were 3 key findings that we wanted to pull out. The first one is that failure is the norm. 80% of these blog posts did not have a disclosure at all. So it's not even that they had a disclosure that was up to the FTC standards. They didn't have anything. So very common that there was something failing. From there, of the posts that did have disclosures and of the posts that were produced in some form of affiliate collaboration with an advertiser, 79% did have a disclosure. So where an advertiser was pushing content out to their affiliates and asking them to promote a specific message, 79% of those types of posts did have a disclosure. So this is an important thing, which shows that the advertisers obviously know that disclosures are an aspect that needs to be included in these posts. And then lastly, of those posts that did have a disclosure, only 21% of them were adequate per the framework that we showed earlier and up to the FTC. So that goes back to, was it clear and unmistakable language? Was it before scrolling? Was it before any affiliate links? And so it's showing that we've got all these blog posts out there, and they may not be up to the standard of the FTC. And like I want to reiterate from the beginning that it's not the affiliate that's responsible for this. It's the brand, because the affiliate is seen as part of your brand's marketing channel. And so thinking about all of this, I want to talk about some of the risks and the costs associated to those risks for noncompliance. So when it comes to the FTC and the public, for public reprimands, for a brand, there's going to be a loss of customers. Lord & Taylor customers are going to say, oh man, I'm really disappointed that they were trying to deceive me through their marketing, and I thought this blogger that I was following or this post I was following was really interesting, and now I find out that they were just paid. For the publishers, they're going to lose business of the brands. So if you don't have the disclosures, if you're causing issues for the brand, nobody's going to want to work with you. And so that's a problem. And then on the FTC side of things, they can take you to court, and you can have court-ordered monitoring where you're going to have to open up your books to the FTC, show them everything that you have, go through a whole process, and you can also end up with fines. So moving forward, I'm going to go through some examples of what some brands are doing to stay on top of this, to be proactive and take control. So I've got 3 different examples of brands, And I have retracted their names for anonymity. And the first one is a large agency that's in online retail. They work with several of the top 50 retailers, and their approach is extreme proactivity. So they have decided that they're going to require all affiliate pages to have a proper disclosure on all the pages stating that they're paid links. So the proper disclosure is key here. It's not just saying there are paid links, it's making sure that it follows that framework. And they will not allow any affiliates into the program without a disclosure present. So for this company, they're starting out the program with a requirement. They're not backing down. They're saying, this is our standard. We're not going to turn around and allow anyone in. This way, they don't have to move forward and have to go back and review everything and go through all of their affiliates in the future. They're able to start out strong. One thing to keep in mind, though, is they are going to need to continually monitor these pages because posts are always changing, pages are always changing. And so just because they're starting out with this high standard, they're going to continually need to enforce it and make sure that it stays that way. The next example is a credit card issuer, one of the top 3 in the country. And for them, they've taken the approach of having a unique disclosure for their brand. So anytime an affiliate has one of their cards on their page, they're going to have a unique brand-specific advertiser disclosure. So they're not going to look at the page and say, oh, you've got something there, you have some kind of disclosure. They're saying, you need to have our specific language there. We need these items. And it's 2 benefits here for the publisher or for the advertiser is that it's easy to show that they're staying proactive. They're able to talk to the FTC, the CFPB, and they're going to be able to say, oh, look, we know that this credit card issuer is being on top of it. We can see their language on all these different pages. We know that they've got a great process here. And then it's also helpful in the monitoring, as I mentioned on the previous slide, how you're continually needing to take a look at everything that's out there. And so they're able to look for very specific text. So for the web compliance tools they're using, it makes it a lot easier for them to maintain that compliance. As a side note, this is actually really beneficial for the publisher as well. This way they're not having to compete. Oftentimes publishers are trying to find the bare minimum of a disclosure, and they're always trying to have less of a disclosure as the guy next door. And so this way everyone's being held to the same standard. They all have the same disclosure across the board. It's all required of everyone, so there's none of this, maybe I can get away with a little bit less so that more traffic will come to my site. The last example here is of a large bank, one that's got over $2 trillion in assets, so pretty large. And for them, they've taken the approach of controlling the traffic flow. So what they're doing is a little bit of an extreme, but what they have required is that any link that leaves a publisher's site has to go through one page. So there may be multiple pages across their site that talks about the different aspects of the bank, different loans, different cards, things like that. If there are any links on those pages, they can only link to the single page that leaves the site. That way they know that anyone that comes to the sites, to the bank site, is going to have to go through that individual page where they've got all of their disclosures, their terms of service, everything. So it's a bit of a safety net. There's no way to leave a publisher site without seeing their disclosures. So this is a great way for them to control everything, standardize the user experience for everyone that goes through the publisher sites. At the same time, though, they are still going to need to ensure that every single page on their publisher sites still has a disclosure. So just because they have that final page and they can ensure that anyone that's leaving the site does see the disclosures, they still need to make sure that anytime there's a mention, any discussion about the brand, they're still going to need a disclosure. So they're kind of taking on a new approach, but also need to make sure that they stick to what the FTC does require. So now you're probably asking yourself, okay, I've seen a bunch of examples of things that have happened. I know the risks. We've seen what other companies are doing. What can you do? What can you take home and do for your team? And so I want to talk about a few different ways that you can approach this. Everybody's different. As I went through these examples, no 2 are the same. And so it's going to be something where it's a continually evolving process, where you're going to teach yourself, you're going to create a process, and you're going to enforce. And it's not something where you're going to do it one time and it's going to fit forever. You're going to have to continually evolve this. So for the teaching, You're going to teach yourself, your colleagues, and your partners. All of the information that I've talked about is publicly available. The FTC has webinars, newsletters, blog posts. Every time there's action taken, they publish it on their site. So everything is publicly available. All the information from the BrandVerity study that we did and all of the resources we used came from the FTC. So there's no smoke and mirrors. It's all out there. You can see it at any point in time. So you're going to teach yourself, learn what's going on, teach your team so that everyone gets on board, so that everyone understands that this is something that's important and everybody's on the same page. And then teach your partners. They may not have the resources to find all of this. They're not going to have a legal team. They're not going to know some of the things that are going on here. And by teaching them and filling them in on what the requirements are, you'll be able to empower them and help them to be compliant and help them to maintain compliance across the board so that it's just a ripple effect where everyone's going to be compliant moving forward. For creating a process, the one thing the FTC doesn't talk about is what a process would look like or what exactly the documentation they're looking for. So the process we have here was taken from the legacy learning systems court-ordered monitoring. So we can assume that the items here are something that is of importance to the FTC. So the first one is that you need to review each affiliate site. You need to know what they say. When it comes to affiliate sites, remember that there are sub-networks involved here too. So it may not be the direct relationship. There may be indirect relationships as well. You're going to need to capture screenshots so that you can prove that you know what's going on the sites and you've got a record there. Record the remediation actions. So if there's anything that's incorrect, you're able to go through and make sure that you prove that you're asking that that's updated. And then for the legacy learning systems, they have to compile a report. So you can take that since this is what the FTC is looking for from legacy learning systems, it's probably a good idea to do for your own program. And the enforcement aspect is the really important piece here. Just because you know what's going on, just because you have screenshots, if you don't prove that you're working towards that compliance and you're working to make sure that everything's running smoothly, it doesn't matter. So you need to make sure that you're proving that you are taking the actions to work towards compliance, that if there are any issues, that you have a record of those issues, so that if the FTC comes to you and they've seen a post somewhere and they say, hey, what's going on here, you're able to say, hey, we're reaching out, we've got the record of reaching out, we're asking them to update everything. And this is just a situation where you're going to have to continually evolve. As you enforce, you're going to have to teach more. Everything's changing all the time with the FTC, and so you'll need to continue learning and then reevaluating your process and continue enforcing. So in summary, big takeaway is that affiliates and partners are seen as part of your marketing program. So they are seen as part of your team, and that's a really important aspect to remember here. And that any endorsement by affiliates or partners need to have a disclosure if being compensated. And again, compensation can be monetary, it can be free items, and from the Cole Haan example, it could even be entering a contest. You're going to need to learn the FTC guidelines for your industry. And so this means going through, reading what they have, listening to their webinars, looking at what happens to others. Unfortunately, there's lots of things cracking down, and so it's painful to learn from other people's mistakes, but it's also a really good thing to learn from their mistakes. Teach others what those guidelines are. So find out who needs to know this, whether it's your legal team, your marketing team, your affiliates, other partner companies you work with, your agencies, so that everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what the requirements are and what you're looking for. Develop a compliance process. Using the framework that I outlined is a great start, but also making sure that you're capturing everything that's going on out there. You're enforcing it, you're showing a trail of what's going on for your brand, and then enforcing your rules. So I want to thank everybody. I know there's a bunch of other talks going on today, so I appreciate you guys choosing to come in here. And at this point, I'm open for any questions. Can you pop up to the mic so that we can get it on camera?
Hi. So I was just wondering, maybe if you could briefly discuss just generally how FTC handles enforcement. So let's say I have an affiliate, they send out an email and they have a disclosure, but it's not at the top of the email, it's at the bottom. How often does the FTC choose to enforce on things like that? And does it start with like a cease and desist letter? Does it immediately come with punitive action? Could you talk briefly about that? Thank you.
Yeah, so from what we have seen, the FTC has kind of been handling every situation a little differently. And one big piece is that they're not going after the one-off scenarios. So if there's one page that's out of compliance, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're having a big issue. It's more of the repeatable things that are going on. And so that's what we have seen. Obviously, I'm no legal expert, so take that with a grain of salt. And what we've also heard is that it does start with a little bit of, reaching out to you, asking you to make adjustments. But if it's a continued problem, that's where they're going to step in. And that's where they're going to file lawsuits and go after you that direction to make sure that you are taking it seriously. In the last 2 years, this has really become more forefront in everybody's mind because the FTC is really starting to crack down. And as we saw with Lord & Taylor and the Cole Haan example, they're kind of just starting out and they're really pushing for this compliance. They've been doing, and back in September, they had like a 3-day session in DC talking about disclosures and compliance. And so it's something that they're really starting to push these days. So as we learn more and as more people get in trouble, unfortunately, we're going to see how seriously they are taking it. So right now, it's just kind of the beginning of what we're seeing as something that'll be pushed harder in the future.
So would you say most of the time, though, the initial contact is, hey, if you're doing something we don't like, take action to correct it, and not, congratulations, you've been sued?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that because I don't know for sure, but I would say yes, most likely. But I don't know enough on their action taking towards brands. I don't know how they reached out to Lord & Taylor or Cole Haan or anything, and they typically don't publish that. They publish more, this is the hard action we're taking. So it could be somewhere in the guidelines, and I'm happy to look it up and see what I can learn for you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Could you pop up to the mic? Sorry, thank you.
To answer your question in a roundabout way, the FTC has come right out and said that if publishers are refusing to comply from your expectations, that it is their expectation that you withhold commissions and refuse payment. So again, I'm no lawyer, BrandVerity is no lawyer, but the expectation, and let them know that I can refuse to pay you and I'm fully within my rights to do so. How it's going to vote, for the relationship is one thing. But, sometimes relationships come after your business.
Sure.
So.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I'll be available for a few minutes afterwards. Gentle reminder, we did publish the study today, so if anybody wants to take a look at it, please visit brandverity.com. You'll be able to download it, and thank you.